back, everybody. This is the A.C.E Football Academy. Coach Dunham again with Coach Hamilton. And today is a great show. It is our Women's World Cup breakdown. We're going to discuss the U.S. roster. We're going to get into some other non-U.S. players to look into, teams maybe you want to follow throughout the tournament. I'm pretty excited about this. There's a potential for a historic three-peat for the United States women's national team. I'm pretty excited about this tournament here.
Yeah, it's always such a fun tournament, even when the U.S. isn't involved or isn't a high power, as we saw with the men's a few years ago. But when you're in it and you have a shot, that makes it even more fun. It makes it even more interesting. Coach, we're going to have some late nights, early mornings with some of these kickoffs in Australia and New Zealand, but that's another side of it that makes it fun. Setting that alarm clock, I think the second USA game kicks off at 3 a.m. our time. So setting that alarm clock for 2:45 it's always just something fun about it.
Yeah, for me, I love learning about new players that I wasn't aware of previously. As World Cup, worldwide, players are playing in different leagues, different countries, and we're not going to be able to follow everybody. Maybe there's a 20-year-old player that is just killing it in their league and is unheard of around the world. We're going to find out who they are in this Women's World Cup. So just like you said, this is going to be hosted in Australia and New Zealand, other side of the world. Late games, set those DVRs, but we're excited to see the U.S. women make some history once again.
Absolutely.
Well, let's dig right into it. We're going to get into the U.S. women's roster. Previously, we gave kind of our, not necessarily disappointment, but reactions to the U.S. women's roster, some of the drops that were unexpected, some players that were picked up that we didn't think maybe, I don't want to say earned it, but maybe they've passed their prime, so to speak. So, Coach, won't you dig into a bit of our roster here for the U.S. women, and we can discuss as we go along?
Yeah, so I think, just a real couple before we dive into potential players and starters for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
I do encourage you to go back and listen to our most recent World Soccer Roundups. There are lots of interesting tidbits that we talk about, just real short breakdowns that we won't mention tonight. So please go back and listen to those if you haven't already. But we mentioned that 14 newcomers to this roster, 14 players making their first ever World Cup appearance, and our average age is still 28.2 years old. I don't know, maybe I'm just having a hard time wrapping my mind around that, but when I hear 14 new players and I look at some of these ages, 18, 21, 23, but then that average age is still 28, it just tells you how I maybe even like front-loaded and back-loaded this U.S. roster is.
Yeah, I don't want to dig too much into the age. I'm more worried about, are they still playing to a World Cup level of play in whatever league they're in? So we're paying attention to a lot of things here. Veterans, we know their experience, their knowledge of World Cup is critical, right? Especially to these younger players. You got Alyssa Thompson, who's 18. She's not just debuting in the World Cup. She's kind of debuting in the national team here a little bit. So let's dig into some of the positional players here. We can discuss how we feel about their chances of starting maybe and kind of go from there.
Let's start with the forwards. Probably the kind of has that new, fresh look to it. You can kind of see the changing of the guard there with the way this roster is set up. The U.S. took 6 forwards: Alex Morgan, Sophia Smith, Alyssa Thompson, Trinity Rodman, Lynn Williams, and Megan Rapinoe. Figure all 6 of those players are going to see the field at some point during this World Cup. You hope that all of these players we mentioned see the field, get to experience that at some point. When I look at this, Coach, I think Alex Morgan and Sophia Smith, based on their current gameplay, are 100% locked in as starters. And then I think there's lots of different ways you can go for that third striker.
Yeah, the interesting thing here is they had their friendly just a couple weeks ago, and Trinity Rodman put her name on the board.
She really did.
Alyssa Thompson, she is a workhorse. She was running nonstop on the field, chasing down balls. Mm-hmm. She was pressing all over the place. She's a worker. Lynn Williams scores goals in WSL.
In bunches.
She didn't have a big game in that work up to the World Cup, but it's really going to be between Alyssa Thompson and Trinity Rodman. And I don't know, after watching that game, I don't know that either one starts every single game.
I agree.
It could be Alyssa Thompson the first game, Trinity Rodman the second game, maybe even Lynn Williams the third game. And they get to find out what combination of forwards works best.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up because let's look at somebody like a Megan Rapinoe or an Alex Morgan who have done this before. There's a ton of experience there, a ton of success there in the World Cup. You know, are those solid players to bring off the bench in at halftime or in the 60th minute when things have kind of gone stagnant? So maybe Alex doesn't start a game or two and we see her come off the bench. I think you're definitely going to see Megan Rapinoe coming in off the bench, whether it's a halftime switch or later in the game. But I just think there's lots of different interesting ways that the forwards can go there.
And I'm glad you brought that up there. I was going to mention that myself. Is Alex Morgan going to start every single game?
Right. There's no way.
With the players that we have here, it's very possible to have 3 different forwards starting every single game that we go through, just to keep everybody fresh, keep the opposing team not really sure how to plan for our forwards. You know, you could be, 50, 60th minute, Alex Morgan comes off and you throw in Alyssa Thompson, and now you've got some speed demon pressing you everywhere.
Right.
And that's going to be an adjustment that every defense is going to have to take care of.
Looking at the midfield, they took 7 players, I believe. Pretty typical, common to take a little more in the midfield and on the defensive side of the ball. Lindsey Horan, Rose Lavelle, Julie Ertz, Andy Sullivan, Savannah DeMello, Ashley Sanchez, and Christy Mewis. To me, Coach, this is where that injury concern comes.
This is a big concern.
Play.
This is a massive concern here.
Are Rose Lavelle and Julie Ertz going to be ready to go? I think that is the biggest question surrounding this entire women's team and how much success they can have in this tournament.
Nothing against Julie Ertz because she's a great defensive midfielder.
Right.
But you don't have Rose Lavelle at 100% for your World Cup games. I don't know if there's anybody that matches her level of talent.
Correct.
Especially in the midfield. You're looking at Andy Sullivan, Savannah DeMello, Ashley Sanchez, Christy Mewis, all rookies for World Cup, not to mention very new to the women's national team.
Yeah, we've mentioned in the previous episode that Savannah DeMello has 0 caps, has not played. She's been at 2 camps, I believe, but has not logged a minute for them.
She did.
I guess she did. Yeah, you're correct. She played. She played in the game match versus Wales last Sunday. But I think that you're right. That circle Rose Lavelle, and of course they're never going to tell you. But if she's 100%, then I think the U.S. has got a shot. If Rose Lavelle's not 100%. You're going to, I think, struggle in some matches when you run into the Swedens and the Canadas of the world. I think you're going to really have some issues in the midfield there.
Yeah, thankfully, Lindsey Horan, she's a bulldog.
Yeah.
I was watching that play-up game the other week, and she was up in that ref's face.
Yeah.
She was in the other players' faces. She doesn't back down from anybody, and I love that they had that vocal leader on the field to help these younger players, and now we've got a presence. Previously it was Becky Sauerbrunn, who's kind of the core that kind of kept everybody together, but as we know, she's no longer playing with the national team here. So I think Lindsey Horan has taken that role.
And I think the U.S. have seen that as well. They named her captain, her and Alex Morgan as co-captains for this tournament. So yeah, I mean, Lindsey Horan's going to have to play well. I mean, there's no secret there. Yeah. She's especially if Rose can't go or if Rose is limited in her minutes. And I think especially in these early games against Vietnam and those teams, Rose might not go because they hopefully won't need much from her. So, again, just those few extra days rest.
And the cool thing that I mentioned this earlier, there's players that are going to pop up that you've never heard of. Well, now we've got 4 players.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We kind of need one of these players. And let's be honest here. You've mentioned this previously. Savannah DeMello has been playing unbelievably in NWSL. Could she be that surprise player to kind of take that role and kind of take it over from this point forward?
Yeah. Defenders, again, they took 7. Coach Crystal Dunn, Naomi Gurman, Emily Fox, Emily Sonnet, Sofia Huerta. Not any big surprise there. Then also they added Elena Cook and Kelly O'Hara. So we talked about Kelly O'Hara in our previous episodes about age and injuries and whether or not they would take her. They did take her. They're doing a thing on Twitter with the U.S., if you follow their women's national team, where they're doing interviews with all 23 of these players. And Kelly O'Hara's is an awesome interview to see how much it meant to her to make the squad, knowing where she is physically and knowing where she is just in her career. It was really cool to see. So I am glad they took her. But again, it's one of those situations where are we seeing a passing of the torch here? Naomi Gurman is 23. Emily Fox is 25. Alana Cook is 26. So are we seeing that passing of the torch in this World Cup?
And I think we need that. I'll be honest. I love Becky Sauerbrunn. I mean, you got Alex Morgans, Megan Rapinoe. Becky Sauerbrunn has been my favorite player on the national team for years.
Right.
I think she's always played at the highest level every game she's ever played in. And she saved our butts quite a few times in some big games.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's the changing of the guard here. And Naomi Gurman, kind of a bit of an unknown, but I've watched her play. She is solid.
Yep.
I think she's going to play well. Crystal Dunn, another solid player. Again, always plays at a high level every single game. So we have some experience in the back line. Who's going to be the players that's going to take those positions here?
Who do you think steps into that role as the other center back now that Sauerbrunn's not going to be there? I mean, Naomi Gurman, I think, is a lock to be the starter there.
Absolutely.
But who is the other center back that steps into that role?
Yeah, it's going to be – I don't know how I feel about Emily Sonnet starting. She doesn't play at the highest level every single game. I'm assuming Emily Fox will probably be the other outside back. So it's kind of between Alana Cook and Sofia Huerta. And honestly, I just don't know who I'm going to go with here. I don't have a favorite, and I'm not down on either one. It's just I'll go to Naomi and say, who do you work with better? Because that's what it's going to come down to. They've got to be synced. We've talked about this when we talked about the men's pro leagues in the club. If those two center backs aren't synced an entire game, you're going to get scored on.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be very important that Naomi finds that partner to work with.
Yeah. And then on the keeper side, they took 3. Of course, Alyssa Nair, the veteran, the starter. No one is doubting that at all. The other 2 choices, I think you and I were both a little surprised with Casey Murphy and Aubrey Kingsbury. But clearly, Alyssa Nair is your number 1 here.
Yeah. I'm not worried about her age because goalkeeper is one of those positions where we've seen guys at 40 years old.
Yeah.
40, 41 years old. Even Tim Howard played to about 40 years old. So as long as they have those instincts, I mean, keepers got to have that instinct to know where to be at all times. So I'm all behind Alyssa. I think she'll do great. But I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, a couple interesting stats with this lineup or this roster. We mentioned 14 World Cup debuts. We mentioned the youngster Alyssa Thompson. Very interesting and very cool, I think, for the U.S. is that 22 of 23 are NWSL players. They're coming from the States, our United States League. Very, I would imagine, and actually I would know, drastically different from the men's side of things.
Yeah, and what we need to figure out is how many players in the World Cup are also playing in the NWSL.
Yeah.
That'll be an interesting stat that we'll look for in the following World Soccer Roundup and give you some more stats on that.
Yeah, so the U.S. have played in all 9 Women's World Cups. Of course, they have 4 titles. They have the 4 stars. And as you mentioned at the top of the broadcast, they are looking to repeat, something that I don't think it's ever been done before.
I don't believe it's ever been done.
But they have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, so one other stat here is there are 8 players on the U.S. women's national team who are number 1 draft picks.
Oh, wow.
For the NWSL. That is in 2014, Crystal Dunn, 2016, Emily Sonnet, 2017, Rose Lavelle, 2018, Andy Sullivan, 2020, Sophia Smith, 2021,
Emily
Fox, thank you. In 2022 was Naomi Gurman, and then 2023 and then finally Alyssa Thompson in 2023. So we have some studs who came into NWSL playing top-notch soccer for us.
Yeah, and again, it is exciting. But Coach, let's dive into some non-U.S. players to watch. Because as you mentioned, you're right. We don't get to see a lot of these players. There are a few that we'll mention that do play in the NWSL, so you do have opportunities to see them. But for most of these players, they're going to pop up on your screen, and you're going to watch them play, and you're going to think, holy crap, that girl is good. Where is she? Who is she? And so that's what makes this really fun.
Yeah, the first one we're going to point out is Debinha of Brazil, who currently plays for the Kansas City Current. She's a goal scorer. She's a forward, typical Brazilian, that typical fast, shifty, has that niche for scoring goals. So Debinha is the first one we're going to be looking at here. There's also Sam Kerr, a veteran of the World Cup, playing for Australia. She currently plays for the English Chelsea club in England. She's also a forward, a known goal scorer. Then we get to some ones that aren't so familiar here.
Well, let's jump down to Christine Sinclair. She is still playing for Canada. Portland Thorns midfielder, holds the record for most goal scorers for Canada. So again, another top-notch goal scorer that you probably have heard of before, who is back in the World Cup.
And from Germany, we have Lena Oberdorf. Of course, I'm sure Germans pronounce it a little bit differently. A midfielder, only 21 years old. She's going to be one of those young superstars to really pay close attention to. Beyond her, we have a Nigerian, Asisat Ashwala. Going to throw that out there. Plays for Barcelona, who, by the way, Barcelona women's team demolishes in the Club World Cup. So she's a solid goal scorer. She's a forward, 28 years old. Keep an eye on her. I believe she was listed as the African Women's Player of the Year. Wow. And so keep an eye on her, playing for Nigeria. Next up, we have Alexa Putellas of Spain, 29-year-old midfielder. And then we have Ji So-yeon of South Korea, 32 years old, out of Chelsea, and another goal scorer for her. So keep your eye on some of these players here.
I mean, that's what makes this tournament fun. Yeah. And there are so many that we haven't listed who will end up winning the Golden Boot or who will end up being the tournament MVP and all those types of things. But that's what makes this fun, is getting to know these teams, getting to know these players, and just a completely different side of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into the group breakdown. We're going to note all 4 teams in each group. The top 2 teams in each group move on to the playoff rounds. Starting in Group A, we have the host New Zealand, Norway, Philippines, and Switzerland. Who are your 2 teams you have moving on from here?
This is really difficult for me. Betting-wise, New Zealand and Switzerland are the favorites to get out of the group betting-wise. I really, really like Norway. I've done some reading, done some research. Norway, again, going back to that website that I've mentioned in the past, the Girls Soccer Network, Norway has arguably the top 3 strikers in the World Cup. In the World Cup, not just in Group A, in the entire World Cup. And I think they're a real dark horse here. And so, if you're asking me to pick, I think Switzerland is a lock. I think Switzerland wins the group.
Okay.
And then I think it comes down to that game, New Zealand and Norway playing each other. I'm interested to see how that goes, but I would love to see the dark horse Norway get out of this group.
Moving on to Group B, we have, again, the other host, Australia, Republic of Ireland, Nigeria, and Canada. I'm going to give my perspective on this.
Sure.
I just don't think Australia has enough to move past the group stages. They've got some veterans. I just don't think they have that level. I think Canada is a walkthrough.
Yep.
I'm going to go with Nigeria.
Okay.
To move through this group stage. I just don't think Australia, even though they're the hosts, and hosts usually do well.
They do.
When they're hosting these tournaments, but I'm going to pass on Australia. And I'm going to give it to Nigeria this time.
All right, I like that.
Moving on to Group C, we have Spain, Costa Rica, Zambia, and Japan. Who are you going with here?
Japan and Spain, right? I mean, Costa Rica might be able to make it interesting in some matches with their style of play, but I think Spain and Japan should be moving on from this group.
I think Zambia is one of those countries that you say they have a team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you just don't ever hear about Zambia.
Yeah.
But I look forward to watching them play. Moving on to Group D, we have England, Haiti, Denmark, and China. I think England is the clear winner of this group. I don't think Haiti has enough firepower to hang with some of these other teams. So it's really between Denmark and China. China's had some ups and downs. I'm going to give surprise Denmark to go through here with England on this group.
I'm actually going to agree with you. I think Denmark, I was just looking at that's what I was doing. Denmark and China, I've lost it now, but basically have very similar odds to win the whole thing.
Okay.
So again, not great, but very similar. So China does have a player who plays for Racing Louisville here close to where we are. Again, another one of those goal scorers, but I think you're right. I think it's England winner and Denmark getting out as well.
And in Group E, we have the United States, Vietnam, Netherlands, and Portugal. I mean, is there really a question on the two teams moving on in this one?
No, not at all.
Vietnam is not going to hang with either of these teams, so we agree. USA and Netherlands, almost a walkthrough here.
Yeah.
Group F, France, Jamaica, Brazil, Panama. What do you like in this one?
Wow. I think this is a pretty tough group. I think Brazil is probably the favorite, followed by France. Just kind of wonder if Jamaica has enough to maybe work in a draw or two and then play in that last game. And if we can get a lot of goals, we get through. But I think my pick here is Jamaica and France.
I'm going to have to agree with you on this. Panama is not going to have enough here. Jamaica has some surprises. They have some good athletes there. May give some frustrations. Moving on to Group G, we have Sweden, South Africa, Italy, and Argentina. Typically, we would say Sweden would be the clear favorite, but they have not played well over the last year.
Struggled.
We'll get a little bit more in detail into that here, but this is going to be one of those odd groups where it may be just a bunch of ties, where no one's just dominating the games. Italy probably going to walk out as your favorite at this point, but there's no one that's hands above the competition in this group.
I agree. And, I think South Africa probably has the most work to do in that group if they want to get out. But Argentina has seen some success. You've already mentioned Italy. And like you said, Sweden, for whatever reason, seems to be struggling all of a sudden. But that's not the game we're playing. The game we're playing is pick who's coming out. So who do you like?
Even though Sweden's struggling, it will be so typical of an experienced team like this to get it all together.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say Sweden, Argentina.
Okay.
I want to say Italy. I don't know enough about Italy to give them a go-ahead.
I'm going to take Italy for you. So I'm going to go Sweden, Italy.
Sounds good. Moving on to Group H. We have Germany, Morocco, Colombia, South Korea. I think we're going to agree Germany is the hands-down favorite to win this group here. I think it's kind of between Colombia and South Korea to move on here.
Yeah. And the betting odds are very tight. To qualify, South Korea is minus 110 and Colombia is minus 150. So a little bit of a favorite there with Colombia, but not a ton. And I agree. I think I'm going to take South Korea here.
I'll go with you on that one. Sounds good. So let's look into the FIFA rankings here. We're going to give 1 through 10 of the current FIFA rankings as of a week and a half ago. And this is however they base their rankings on. I don't know how the point system goes, but it's obviously off of wins and losses. Number 1, obviously, is the Americans. But as we stated before, they have some injuries in the midfield. That's going to cause some concern here. Yeah. Behind them, number 2 is Germany. Germany probably playing pretty well. Men's, women's, Germany is always going to be on that top horse there. Number 3, you have Sweden. So even though they struggled a little bit over the last year, they're still getting some top-notch wins. Mm-hmm. So like I said, they might just get it all together out of nowhere and start winning some games. 4th on the list is England. 5th would be France, followed by Spain. I'm anxious to watch how Spain plays in this World Cup. They've not done well in previous World Cups.
Right.
I believe they have a talented roster, and I'll be watching Spain this World Cup here, followed by number 7, Canada.
This is the team I'm interested to watch. Canada has had a lot of international success, especially recently, including going back to the gold medal winners in the last Olympics.
That's true.
So I'm very interested to see how Canada does in this tournament.
Number 8, you have Brazil, followed by number 9, Netherlands, which I don't know enough about the Netherlands, but them being at number 9 is kind of surprising. And another team I'm going to be looking out for. And then rounds up at number 10 with Australia. I've said this before. I don't think they have enough talent to get by their group.
Yeah.
But they have some talented players. I don't know if they're full of enough talent to get them through the group stages.
I mean, that would be... Go back to the groups really quickly. Australia is with...
Group B?
I mean, they should get out of that group. Now, do they get past the round of 16? I don't think you all can't see this. It is Australia, Republic of Ireland, Nigeria, and Canada in that group B. I think if Australia doesn't get out of this group, they're going to be extremely disappointed in the World Cup.
We know in previous World Cups there are African teams that give teams problems.
Yes,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Because they never see them until really the World Cups. And Nigeria has, in the past, some solid teams that have come through. Yeah. And like I said, Nigeria has previously the African Women's Player of the Year, which we know before. So I still think Nigeria is going to get through here with Canada. I just don't think Australia is going to get it done.
I love that. Definitely something to keep a watchful eye on.
We are going to do some teams to watch. Either they could be interesting, they could cause some shock wins, or maybe they could just win it all. Obviously, you have the Americans, and we've said this numerous times here, injuries are a problem. They brought in some youth, 14 players who are debuting in their first World Cup, and they are very strong at the forward positions here. If their forwards score goals every single game, 1, 2, 3, or more, they're going to get through. At least to the semifinals, if not the finals. They've got the talent to get there.
Yeah. The second team here is Spain. Spain's having some coaching issues. To put it bluntly, they just don't like him. He's getting results, which is why he's still coaching. Yeah. But they've had some players leave the team. But again, it's another one of those.
I believe that's recent.
Yeah, absolutely.
The players have said, I'm just not playing with the national team anymore.
Yeah. But that being said, they're still very talented. Plenty of professional players, a lot in that Barcelona side of things. Mm-hmm. So Spain, another team to watch here.
Next, we're going to follow England. I think in the last World Cup, England was right there, at least with the Americans, of teams that almost went all the way through to win it all. However, they are missing 3 key players to injury. They have been struggling in the last few matches here. Only 1 goal scored in their last 3 matches at the national team level here. That's concerning.
Yeah, and I'm sure that has something to do with those key players missing. But the fact is they're going to be missing over the next couple of weeks too. Mm-hmm. And I think England is – we'll see how it goes, but I think England is going to have a hard time advancing deep into this tournament.
Yeah, I agree. Next up, we have France, another top name that everybody knows about. They have a new head coach. He's not famous. He's not world-renowned. But sometimes it's these kinds of coaches that, number one, make a name for themselves, but that players love.
Right.
That he doesn't come in with fear. Players, they've heard about him, and they're like, oh, God, what's he going to be like? He can build a nice, clean slate, build the team up around his philosophy, and they could really get some shock wins here.
Yeah, absolutely. And our next team here is Germany, who we've already mentioned. Plenty of talent. We know the history. We know how good they can be. Haven't done a lot to be impressed by lately, but I still think that they could be a team that you see in the Final Four.
Absolutely. Australia. I previously have said I'm not big on Australia here. They have Sam Kerr, who is a goal-scoring talent. They are the host nation. Host nations just find a way to find their mojo. I remember years ago in the men's where South Africa hosted. It just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And we're scoring goals,
Yeah.
and they were fun to watch.
Yep.
Australia's going to be one of those teams where it's going to be boom or bust.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm on the bus side of this, but they're on here for a reason because they've won big games before, and they could get some teams some problems. You just don't know what to expect from them.
I agree with everything you just said. I think a lot of it will depend on the draw that Australia gets. I think that, as I mentioned, you and I are different on this, but I think they get out of the group. And then in that round of 16, of course, I think they'll be second in that group. But so you're going to be playing a group winner.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it just all kind of depends on the draw there.
Absolutely. And how your health is by that point, as is any other team. Following that up, we're going to look at Brazil. They recently beat Germany, tied England, close game with the Americans this past February. And this is Marta. Who doesn't know Marta? I mean, this is like her 4th World Cup.
Yeah.
I need to look into how many World Cups she's played in so far. But this is going to be her final World Cup. And those players look at her as a legend, because she is. And they're going to win some games for her.
Yeah, and we've mentioned about the U.S. and their veterans, and Megan Rapinoe has announced her retirement, and this is going to be it for her after the end of this season. But Marta is just a name that everybody knows. It is just and it doesn't matter if you're talking men's or women's side. If I looked at you, if you follow soccer at all, if I said, "Oh, tell me about Marta," you would say, "Oh yeah, she plays for Brazil." You just know
Absolutely.
that, and so you always get that. You always get that passion, that drive to build up. What's the word I'm looking for? To rally around the person,
Right.
And Brazil has that this tournament, and I don't think that's something to be taken lightly.
Following up, we have your favorite here, Canada. I don't want to say not a highly talented team, but they don't have superstars. Correct. Like some of these others have. They got Christine Sinclair, who was a goal scorer, but they're a tight-knit group. They play synchronized soccer together. Like you said before, they have had some success over the last year. They're going to go to battle for each other here. Not to mention, they were in the Olympic gold medal game, and they're going to be ready to play some ball here. So this is a very interesting team to watch in this World Cup.
Yeah, I don't know why, and I can't explain it to you because everything you just said is very true. But I just like the way they play the game. They kind of just like on the men's side, when we play Canada on the women's side, it's always a dogfight.
Yeah.
No matter the talent level, they're just one of those teams that just play well from goalkeeper to strikers, from strikers to goalkeepers, inside, outside. They play really, really well. And I really, really like Canada in this tournament.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. Their style of play is going to be fun to watch here. We're going to round this out with our final team is Sweden. As we said before, they have struggled. They have 1 win, 2 ties, 3 losses over their last 6 games.
That is unbelievable to me.
For Sweden, that's almost unheard of.
Yeah.
But Sweden's one of those historical teams that does well in the World Cup. They've always had a solid defensive team. And there's been times when the Americans just could not find a way to beat them. And that's been the last 2 or 3 years. You don't know what you're going to get with Sweden here. They may just all of a sudden get it together in the World Cup and they just start annihilating people. You just don't know what to expect here, kind of like Australia. Could be another boom or bust type of team here.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned Australia being more to your bust side of things. I think Sweden for me is more to my boom side of things here. When you have a bunch of veterans, sometimes those friendlies, sometimes it's just another game and you kind of going through the motions. But it's go time now, and when you have veterans like that, I think that Sweden is a threat in this tournament.
We're going to round this episode up. We're going to give our personal selections here of how we think this tournament is going to go. Without going through the groups again, let's just go straight through the Final Four. Who is in your semifinal? Of course, we don't have our bracket in front of us, so we don't know who's going to be on either side here. Of course, that all depends on who wins their group and who's number 2. That's going to separate what bracket you go to. But if you're just glance at this, who are your top 4 teams that you believe will at least be in the semifinal?
I am going to go with the U.S. I'm going to take Germany. I'm going to take Canada. And I am going. Kind of want to take somebody fun, kind of a dark horse here. U.S., Germany, Canada, and I'm going to take Switzerland.
I am also going to take the Americans. I'm also going to take the Germans. I'm going to take Spain.
Okay.
As kind of my, I guess you call them my surprise team, but I think they have the talent to get there. So I got Americans, Germans, the Spanish. Yeah, picking that fourth team is definitely difficult because there's so many teams here that could make it through. But I think I'm with you. I'm going to go with Canada. I love watching them play.
I do too.
They're just so much fun to watch. So we got some similarities going on here.
Yeah, if you gave me a fifth team, I think then I start looking at Sweden. I'll probably throw Sweden in there as my fifth team,
Right?
Things like that. But Switzerland, Sweden, for me, is kind of a coin toss. I'm fairly confident in those other three.
The fun thing to watch here is, do the Americans get the historic three-peat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Barring injuries, getting through, they have the striker talent to get through every single game here.
They do.
Well, this has been the A.C.E Football Academy, our Women's World Cup breakdown. We hope you've enjoyed listening to this. If you have any disagreements with our picks, or maybe you have some inside scoop that we're not aware of, please post on our Facebook page. We'd love to hear back from you. Coach Hamilton, Coach Dunham, please watch the women as they go after their three-peat in the Women's World Cup starting this week, July 20th. Any last points here, Coach Hamilton, to add?
No, just exciting time. July 21st, I believe, is the U.S.'s first game against Vietnam. They play at 9 o'clock. I know we'll both be watching. It's a fun time. I guess my final point here is, if you're a young player, this is something that I will do with my teams as well, but if you are a young player, find a player who plays a position. Maybe you play lots of positions. Okay, well, find a player who plays a position you like, and just study them this World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Not only when they have the ball, but when they're doing when they don't have the ball. Things like that. As coaches, watching these teams, I learned so much. Just seeing different formations and different ways to move the ball, different runs, things like that. So to our players that listen, I would really, really challenge you to pick 2 or 3 of your favorite players on each team and really study them this World Cup.
This has been the A.C.E Football Academy. We thank you for listening. If you enjoy watching and or listening, please give us a 5-star rating on either podcast platform that you listen to us to. We enjoy your participation here, and we'll catch you next time. It's the A.C.E Football Academy.